Yes, I know we have a staff of top scientists in uniform. There are also some top civilians available to us if we need them.
G'day, welcome back to the channel. Today we're looking at the Runcam Thumb 2, and you've just seen some footage from this camera. I attached it to my little Foxia whoop and flew around for a couple of days, and I got the best and the worst footage, put them into that little montage for you so you can see what the camera is capable of and where its weaknesses are, and I'll speak to that a little more further in the review. But for those who don't know, the Runcam Thumb cameras are a line of cameras that don't have batteries in them. You power them externally. You can power them from the 5-volt rail on your flight controller, or you can connect them up to a separate beck that you then plug into the balance port of your LiPo. And so that makes them lighter and smaller than things like the Runcam 5 or the regular GoPro or whatever. Now, to date, they have been, the thumb range has, the Thumb Pro I think did 4K, but only at 30 frames per second. And if you're doing freestyle, if you're doing some fancy stuff, 30 frames per second is really not up to the task these days. People want higher frame rates because it makes everything smoother, everything flows better, and if you want to slow it down, you can slow it down to 30 frames and still get reasonably smooth motion. So the switch to 60 or 50 frames per second is a huge leap forward in my honest opinion. Now, these cameras also have gyro sensors in them, so you can use gyro flow for stabilization. The Thumb 2 has a built-in sort of auto image stabilization thing, but I haven't tried that because generally those don't work as well as stabilizing in a program like gyro flow. So I threw this on the whoop, went around, did a few circuits in sunny and cloudy conditions to try and get a pretty good idea of how the thing performed. So what I'm going to do now is look at the pros and the cons of this camera, the good and the bad. Well, the first good thing is the quality is pretty damn nice. I mean, in the best of video, when you get the lighting right and everything's good, it is a pretty capable little camera. The field of view is just about dead right. The colors are good. The resolution is sharp, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with it in that respect. Also, the good is it does 50 or 60 frames per second. It has those high frame rates, which we all love for freestyle stuff. It doesn't produce jello like the smaller Runcam Thumb does, even without an ND filter. It comes, or you can buy it with ND filters. It doesn't come with them unless you order it with them, but you get a choice of 3, I think it's ND 8, 16 and 24 ND filters, and I would always recommend getting ND filters. If you want the cool motion blur when you're close to the ground, you need ND filters. So yeah, order that. I would be silly not to order those. They're not expensive. And it also doesn't have a lot of lens flares. Now, that's a positive or a negative. Some people like lens flares. They love having lens flares in the image. But personally, I don't want lens flares. Now, as you can see in this footage, there are some flares, but not a lot. They're pretty minimal compared to some of the original Runcam 3 and things like that. This is a fantastic set of optics in this little camera. So, yeah, those are the good things that I found. Now, let's look at the bad things. There's a little LED light pipe around the edge of the camera, which is designed to show you whether it's on, whether it's recording, what mode it's in. But in bright sunlight, you just can't see it. It just gets totally washed out. So you got to hold it into shade, hold it up to your face to see what's going on. Yeah, that doesn't work for me. If you're flying in dark conditions or dim conditions, it's perfectly fine, or if you're operating indoors. But when you get out there in that bright sunlight that we all love to FPV in, nah, they could do better. The other thing is it has QR codes set up. Now, this is something that Runcam introduced quite some time ago. Some of their cameras have Wi-Fi, which means you use an app to set it up. But this has QR codes, so you still need an app. And you enter the details into the app, and then it produces a QR code. So you turn on the camera, double-click it twice, or double-click the button, and it goes into the configuration mode. You then hold your smartphone up to the camera. It reads the QR code, sets the parameters, and then goes back to its normal operating mode. Now that sounds fine, and if you're doing it indoors, that's great. But when you've got an ND24 filter on and you're outside in the bright sun, it's very hard to get it to work because it just can't see the phone. Even if turn it around so the sun's at your back, the ND filter blocks so much of the light. I found it very difficult to get it to change configuration with the ND filters on a really bright sunny day. But hey, this is a trade-off because Wi-Fi is an extra chip, an extra cost, puts the price up. So using the QR code system saves a bit of money, probably saves a little bit of weight as well because it needs no added hardware. Another downside of having the QR code system is that unlike Wi-Fi, there's no preview. You can't look on your phone and see what the camera sees, which is kind of frustrating. If you want to set your exposure levels or other parameters, it's really nice if you can preview that on your phone so that you don't find out suddenly when you get home that everything is too dark or everything is too bright. Yeah, because there's EV adjustment. You can adjust the exposure variable up or down. And in my testing, I found on a bright sunny day, I reduced it by 1. So EV -1 was much better. When I had EV 0, the sky was getting blown out. In fact, this footage here, this was with EV 0. You can see that even the reflections on the leaves here were blown out. It was just clipped. All the whites were way too high. When I set it to -1, then it worked much better, as you can see in this footage, which was taken with that particular setting. Now, and while we're on the subject of settings and negatives, it does not give you the ability on the app to set the ISO or the shutter speed, which again, it's really annoying because if you're going to use an ND filter, you want to get that great motion blur, you want to be able to fix the shutter speed and fix the ISO so that you know how much blur you're getting. And also, if you look at this piece of footage, the camera is always in auto mode. You can't turn off the auto mode and manually set those parameters. So when you go from a dark area into a light area, it automatically winds down the exposure, and that you can see it changing. And if you want nice cinematic footage, you don't want that changing. You want it fixed. You can always change it a little bit when you're editing, but you don't want the camera fiddling with it. So that's a bit of a disappointment if you were hoping you were going to get a replacement for your GoPro, which has those manual setups. Maybe they'll change that in firmware. I certainly hope they do, because I know that the previous Thumb, I think it was the Pro, you could set the ISO, you could set the shutter angle. So maybe they're going to produce a firmware update which will solve that. So yeah, let's keep our fingers crossed. Now, the other problem, which is probably one of the most annoying things about this camera, is where the SD card is positioned. It's underneath, right in the middle. And if you use the mount that comes with the camera, once you put the camera in the mount, you can't get the card out. You have to either you have to remove the camera from the mount to get the SD card out. But fortunately, of course, they have that USB connector on the side. And that means that you can plug in a USB cable and download directly to your computer. The negative side of that is it's only USB 2. You get about 26 megabytes a second of transfer rate. If you've got 30 gigs of files to transfer, you're going to be waiting a long time for that. But given that there is that USB connector, and this will operate as a webcam, I would invite Runcam to update their app so that you can have a preview mode. So you can use an OTG connector on your smartphone, plug it into the USB-C port, and then use the webcam as a preview when you're setting up the various controls, such as the exposure variable and so forth. That would be brilliant. Then you could have all the benefits of the Wi-Fi enabled phones without the cost and complexity. Just plug the camera directly into your smartphone and enable us to see what the camera sees. So we can choose the right ND filter and we can choose the right exposure values. That would be, these things are all software fixable. So that would be excellent. It'd be nice if we had a USB 3 port, but it's only USB 2, and I don't think they're not going to change that with software, so you're stuck with that. But there we go. That's basically a roundup. That's the system. And now I've used it in a number of places and different lighting conditions, and overall I'm really happy. I would spend $100 on this camera. Now, it was sent to me for free, gotta say. They sent me a free one. But as I say, I do have a lot of Runcam cameras and I am happy with most of them. And this one, yeah, I think if you're looking for something basically the equivalent of a bare bones GoPro at a fraction of the price, a tiny fraction of the price, with the limitations that I've outlined, if you can live with those limitations, then, and some of those limitations may be fixed with firmware updates, then this camera isn't a bad deal. It's not a bad deal at all. So yeah, I'll leave you with some more footage that I've taken. Don't want to bore you too much, but there you go. If you've got comments, questions, anything you'd like to ask or say, go to the section below this video where YouTube has provided a little space for you to do so. I thank my Patreon supporters who make it possible for me to produce these videos, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next time on RC Model Reviews. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.